Now? Ray's trying to get my attention. He's like, now, I tell you. Get busy. Good morning. We're in Revelation. Brent, come yell at me again. He likes to yell at me about that. There you go. I like to do it just to get him to yell, get him excited, make him feel important. So we're in the book of Revelation, and we are in chapter 8 and 9 today. We're going to have to move a little faster, or we're not ever going to finish this book. So let's review a little bit about where we are. So we open the book, we see God sitting on a throne surrounded by 24 elders, and we know that we believe those to be the 12 tribes of Israel and the 12 apostles, indicating the old and new covenant. And in front of the throne are 7 lampstands. These 7 lampstands represent the 7 churches of Asia Minor. And then also the 7 spirits of God, whether they be characteristics of God or actually 7 spirits or just the angels, particular angels maybe, of those churches. And then in front of this throne is a sea of glass, like glass. It's just smooth, crystal clear. And then we see 4 creatures, each having 6 wings, eyes all over. And then surrounding them are tens of thousands of angels. Surrounding them is an innumerable crowd of Christians. And then we see God extend his hand, and in his hand is a scroll that is written on both sides. And this scroll is sealed by 7 seals. And again, the repeating thought throughout Revelation is 7. 777, completeness. You know, he's talking about this is complete. And so the question is asked, who can open this seal? John weeps because he says he can't think of anybody that's worthy to open the seals. And they answer and they say, Jesus is. Yeah, they actually say the Lion of Judah, right? And so in our minds, we picture a lion coming forth, and yet when they show us the next picture, it's a slaughtered lamb. And that's who takes the scroll and is able to open the scroll and say what is in it. And inside the scroll, we see, with each seal broken, we see a new part of a vision. We see the 4 horsemen with the first 4 seals, which talks about destruction of calamities on earth, throughout earth, and things that are going to be happening, not to be thought of as, in my opinion, and in the spiritualist approach, in my opinion, they're not something that we're supposed to take literal and in chronological order, but they're symbolic of the things that are happening in our world throughout history. And then the 5th seal opens up, and the 5th seal is a little bit of a different seal because it's more of a limited seal where it doesn't affect the whole world. It affects only the martyrs, okay? Only the martyrs, those Christians and the people of God, not just Christians, but people of God that have been put to death and suffered because of their faith. And their question is, how long? How long? And then he comes to the 6th seal. And in the 6th seal, God's wrath has come to a point where he says, Rome, in their case, when he's speaking to the 7 churches, they're particularly interested about their lives, what's happening in our lives. And it's one of the issues with people that take the historicist or futurist view of Revelation is they're talking about it being way out in the future. Well, that would be no comfort to the seven churches at the time. And John writes Revelation as a comfort to those churches. And so somebody telling me that, hey, all the pain and suffering you're going through, it'll be worthy in 2,000 years. That does nothing for me. That doesn't make me feel encouraged at all. And so we believe that he's writing them about things that are actually going to be happening in their time. And so the 6th seal dealing probably most specifically with Rome, but it can fit in all ages and the things that are going to be happening with him. And then the question comes from them, well, all this stuff that's going on, all this bad stuff that's happening, who can withstand these things? He uses the word stand, but it's actually in translation, it's withstand these things. Who can withstand all these disasters and calamities and tortures and deaths? And he said, you know. He turns the question back to the one who asked him the question. And we find in the next chapter that those that can stand are those who are marked with the seal of God. And so oftentimes you hear people want to say that it's an actual seal that they're marked with. That's not what it is. Our seal is what? What is our seal as Christians? The Holy Spirit. And how do we receive that seal? Through baptism and acceptance of Jesus, right? When we're baptized, he seals our lives. And so those people then are sealed. And he says those people can withstand all that's coming their way. Does that mean they're delivered from what's coming their way? Absolutely not. He doesn't promise them that. He doesn't tell them that. You're still going to have sufferings in life. What makes us different than the world? A 4-letter word. Starts with H, ends with E. Hope. Hope. That's what separates us from the rest of the world. When I suffer, I have hope. When a non-Christian or somebody who does not believe in God suffers, what do they have? Nothing. Nothing. They just suffer. When I suffer, despair. When I suffer, I know that there's an end to that. I know that there's God at the end of that, and that I'm going to be delivered, no matter how bad it is. And I've had some nice ill elements in my life. It's going to end. Whether I pass away or not, it's going to end, and it's going to end beautifully, not in despair and not in hopelessness and dark nothing. So he opens up 6 of the seals. Man, we're all pumped because it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's so exciting. We're getting to the 7th seal. Oh man, we can hardly wait. It's going to be really a great seal, right? And we get to this one and it says, and when the Lamb opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven, lasting for half an hour. Well, that seems kind of anticlimactic to me. I don't know about you. But all this big buildup and all these calamities and all the death and suffering, and now it's silence. Well, what does that mean? Why do we have moments of silence? For meditation. Can't think of anything else. You're in a service or before a game, and they say, let's take a moment of silence and remember 9/11. Why are we taking a moment of silence? Because we don't have anything to say? Hardly. Opportunity for prayer, reflection, those things. It's an opportunity for prayer. Silence is one of the greatest tools in giving or teaching or making presentations. You see what I mean? We do not like silence. It is uncomfortable for us as Christians, as people. It's uncomfortable. We have to learn to use the silence in prayer. Yes, and that's what this silence is, and we'll follow that in the next verse, the next few verses, when he talks about the angel that's coming to lead us into prayer. I had Jonathan Karkowski ask me one time, how can I improve my teaching? And I said, the best thing you can do is not say a thing. When you ask a question to the crowd, don't say a thing. Just sit there or stand there. I guarantee you somebody's going to answer, or they're going to ask you to repeat the question. But there will not be silence for more than 30 seconds, ever. We don't like it. And so he says for half an hour. Can you imagine sitting in complete silence for half an hour? She says that would be a blessing. Sometimes I feel that way too. So let's go to the next few verses. And I saw the 7 angels who were standing in front of God. Remember the 7 angels from before, beginning of the book. And they were given 7 trumpets. And another angel came and he stood at the altar. And he was holding a golden censer, and he was giving a large quantity of incense so that he could offer it, along with the prayers of God's holy people on the golden altar in front of the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints rose up from the hand of the angel in front of God. And then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and he threw it on the earth. There were crashes of thunder, loud rumblings, lightning, and an earthquake. And we've seen that before as well. The lightning, thunders, and earthquake, what do those indicate? Do you remember? Not destruction in this case. They always accompany what? God's actions. Go back to Mount Sinai. What did he see? What did the people see and hear? Thunder, lightning, loud booms, okay? And it freaks everybody out. Oh my goodness, okay? When God speaks, everyone listens. He has a way of making that happen. And so, again, here he is speaking. So along comes these 7 angels. Each one of them is giving us a trumpet. And my brother this morning says, are we on the horns? And I said, no, we're on the trumpets. And I thought, no, you're right. These are actually horns, okay? They're ram horns. They have I can't remember the word for it. It starts with an S. But they are a ram horn that they blow. A shofar, there you are. The shofar. They blow a shofar for what reason? What is the reason that the Jewish people used to blow this shofar or the trumpet? What's that? An announcement. Announcement. Hey, pay attention. I got something to tell you. Or call to action. Everybody gather. It's time for us to get together. Think about Jericho. Why'd they use the shofar for that? For what? Bringing the walls down for battle. Okay? For battle. Okay? Yes, sir. Yeah, we hit that. You walked out. Then you came back. We already got the silence part. But thanks, Jim. So yeah, all those things are there. And it also is an issue of a warning. How many of you live in the Puyallup Valley? Ording, Sumner down there. You ever heard of the warning down there? The Lahar. You're down there. I substitute teach at a school down there. And when that alarm goes off, we have to hike up the hill. I don't like that. Because that's a steep hill. And the nice thing about that lahar is, about that siren, is it will stop a lahar. I mean, it just makes the lahar stop right there in its tracks. No? Oh, I thought it did. What's the purpose of that alarm? It's a warning. It's telling you, get ready, get out of here, get safe, get up the hill, quick. I'm not quick. I think I'll probably get washed away with a lahar. But here he is, blowing trumpets of warning. And we see again, as we saw with the 7 seals, we have how many trumpets? 7. Again, 7. The repeating theme, 7. Completeness. It means this is everything. Everything to do with it. So, what is the point of the angel taking the censer and the prayers and the incense and hurling it to earth? What is happening there? Do you believe God answers your prayer? Yeah. God answers prayer. And we saw even with the seals that those who were under the altar, those who had been sacrificed in the name of God, in the name of Jesus, they are praying to him and saying, how long? How long? Their prayers are being answered. He takes their prayers along with the incense, along with this fire, and he casts it to earth, and he says, here's the answers to your prayers. Now, they probably didn't see that or consider that as being their answer. They probably would have thought of something else. When we ask for things in our prayer, we have an idea what we think God should do. And it's usually wrong. In my experience, it doesn't work out that way. And they're asking for deliverance and save us and keep the Romans from harming us. And in my mind, I'm thinking, destroy those Romans and get rid of all the bad people on earth and I'll be better off. And that's not what God says. And that's not what God does. God says, I will strengthen you. And yes, they'll be punished, but I want to give them a chance. I want to give them a warning. God, how many chances do you give those people? How many chances do you give them? She says, look at the Old Testament. You see how many chances they got. God is immeasurably patient. He's immeasurably patient. We should learn to have just a little of his patience, yes. Yes, those warnings, again, and these from the spiritualist approach or the idealist approach, we believe that these are warnings not just to the 7 churches and the time that they're in, but we believe them to be warnings to all of us. Pay attention, he's saying. Pay attention to what God can and will do. Lessons and answers that God will deliver if you will just listen. And then the 7 angels who had 7 trumpets prepared to sound them. And the first angel sounded his trumpet, and there was hail and fire mixed with blood, and it was hurled down on the earth. And a third of the earth was burned up. A third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. And the second angel sounded the trumpet, and something like a huge mountain, all ablaze, was thrown into the sea. A third of the sea turned into blood, and a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. The third angel sounded his trumpet, and a great star, blazing like a torch, fell from the sky on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood, and a third of the waters turned bitter, and many people died from the waters that had become bitter. The first trumpet, he blows the first trumpet. What happens? Destruction. Destruction of the earth. He talks about trees being burned up and the grass being burned and all the things that go on. He's sharing with us there's going to be destruction. Throughout the history of mankind, has there been destruction of trees being burned and grass being burned? And oh, there has? Are you sure? Really? Is it from heaven? How many of the wildfires are started by lightning? Who sent those? Who sent those? You say, oh, well, it's because we didn't manage the forests well. Well, if you don't believe in God, if you don't believe in Jesus Christ, and things happen around you, what do? You try and come up with an explanation, don't you? Mother Nature, whoever she is, okay? It's something. Oh, it's global warming. There we go. That's the new one, right? Global cooling. I was watching a guy the other day talk about, he says, when in the 1960s, they said, this is going to happen in 10 years. And then in 1970, there's going to be a new ice age in the next 10 years. And then in 1980, there was going to be this in the next 10 years, and on and on and on. None of them have come to pass. Why not? Right now, we're in the earth is going to heat up. We're going to have all this CO2 is going to warm up the earth. It's going to become, it might, but I'm not going to bet on it. Even though Al Gore says, I said this 30 years ago. I said the earth was going to be destroyed in 10 years, 30 years ago. And look where we are now. That's a joke. Actually, it's pretty funny. Yes, sir. He's saying when Mount St. Helens blew, there were warnings of all sorts of experts who said something big's going to happen. And yet 50 people still died. People were still on that mountain camping out when that mountain blew. They don't know what they're talking about. That wouldn't really happen. But the first trumpet sounds, and we see destruction on this earth that has been sent. And it says a third of the earth. So when he says a third, what do you think he is referring to? If you go back to the seals, he talks about a fourth. Here he talks about a third. Which is bigger, a fourth or a third? Math time. All right, third's bigger. Okay. When we get to the bowls, which is next, the 7 bowls is next, it's all. It's no longer a fourth or a third, it's all. What would that tell you? It's getting more and more intense, okay? God is becoming more and more intense in dealing with earth dwellers. Are you an earth dweller? No, you're not. If you're in here, you're probably not. You're a heaven dweller. Are you in heaven? Aren't you? Spiritually, we're heaven dwellers. Remember, John stepped through a door, and it was heaven, right in front of him, right now. Now, we say, well, it don't feel like heaven to me. But that hope we have, that's a guarantee. That's a guarantee that we're with Christ.
And hope is a mindset.
Can be a mindset, yes. Hope can be a mindset. But when we use the word hope in our English language, we really mess it up, I think. We take hope as a wish. We make them synonymous. They're not. When he uses hope, he's saying guarantee. Okay? Christ is our hope. Does that mean he's our wish? We think maybe he'll get us into heaven? No. Christ will get us to heaven. He brings us into heaven. He brings us into the presence of God. That's who Jesus is. He is our hope. And that's how you have to think of hope. We get it really messed up in my mind, and I do too. We want to use it as a word wish. It is not. He comes to the second trumpet. The second trumpet. One of the things you're going to notice, and I'll give you the references so you can look it up, we do not have time, is that most of these, or many of these trumpets and things that we see are happening with the trumpets are associated and reminiscent of the 10 plagues that Moses presented to Pharaoh, that God presented through Moses to Pharaoh. In the first trumpet, it's very similar to the 7th plague, and that's Exodus 9, 13 through 35. The second trumpet causes a huge mountain to burn, and when it's thrown in the sea, a third of it turns to blood, a third of the creatures in the sea die, a third of the ships are destroyed. And that's similar to, again, the first plague in Exodus 7, and they're not exactly alike, but they're similar. Exodus 7, 14 through 24. There is a real, and it is for me, a real struggle in reading the 4 versions or the 4 approaches to Revelations. And I don't know about you, Jim, if you have this same issue, but the preterist, or the historists, some of the stuff that they see Revelations as saying, man, they really bite. I mean, they really sound solid. You find that? Yeah, do you find that yourself when you read the, yeah, some of them are, not so much the other two, the futurist, I think they're way out there personally. That's my own personal opinion. I think they're kind of way out there. which is, by the way, a huge portion of evangelicals are on the futurist side. For me, it doesn't bite, but boy, the historicists, it really rings some of the stuff they say. Josephus writes a lot about the fall of Jerusalem. Josephus, we know, is a historian back during the fall of Rome, fall of Jerusalem. And he writes a whole lot about what was going on. So we don't just have Bible accounts of things that happened. We have a historian. And Josephus talks about a battle on the Sea of Galilee and the total destruction of all the Jews on that sea, okay? Any boat, any ship, anything they had was completely destroyed. Bodies floating everywhere. And it sounds a whole lot like this. It sounds a whole lot like this. Because when you use the word mountain, oftentimes in prophetic language, it usually means a kingdom. Were the Jews a kingdom? Most assuredly they were. And so it's easy for me to say, well, that's really what he's talking about here. But in reality, it's part of history. It happens over and over again. The Battle of Midway, the Armada, all of those things are things that happened, great battles upon the sea about kingdoms that were falling or falling, and talking about destruction. It's throughout history these things happen. And it is the destruction of man's commerce. When you destroy all of a country's ships, you destroy their ability to do commerce. So we've destroyed his the commerce, and destruction of the land. And then we come to the third trumpet, and the third trumpet is the destruction of natural resources. He talks about how this I gotta find my place, star, which represents angels corporately, or also kingdoms or people on the earth, named wormwood, falls to earth. And wormwood falls to earth, and it does what? It poisons the water. Okay? And here's another point where it's real easy to fall into the historist's point of view. Do you know what? Well, let me tell you, wormwood is actually a plant, okay? It's absinthe. Absinthe, I can't really say it, but it's absinthe. It's used to make vermouth, and it's used to make a drink called absinthe. It is a bitter, all right, for all the alcoholics out there somewhere. They like bitters in their drink. I don't understand any of that stuff, but that's what they say. It's also something that affects the central nervous system, okay? So it is a poison. What's interesting is this word absinthe, or wormwood, in the Ukrainian language, wormwood is translated Chernobyl. You see I don't know if you can see it very well, the sculpture on the top is an angel blowing a trumpet. You know where that is? It's in Chernobyl. Chernobyl. Can you drink the waters from Chernobyl? Sure you can. You won't live long, but you sure can. It poisons the water. And so you're like, whoa, see, they really got this down. He's talking about Chernobyl. And so the historists, man, they jump all over that. So he's right there. That one happened in 1984, 86. So that means he's on the third trumpet, the fourth trumpet. And it's real easy to fall into that trap. But it happens many times. For instance, the volcano we talked about in trumpet 2, Vesuvius blew in AD 76. What happened to Vesuvius? But what happened when it blew? Pompeii, okay, blew up, lava and ash fell up all on the people in Pompeii and killed it, thousands upon thousands of people. So some people said, well, see, that's what that one was. But again, he's talking about things that happen. There's destruction of natural resources. Who is one of the greatest offenders of natural resources? We are. We are. And sometimes we as Christians like to say, well, God will fix it and we don't really have to worry about the environment and, God will take care of everything. And no. God tells us at the very beginning, when he created man, he told him he is a what of the earth? He's a caretaker or a steward of the earth. And some people say, that means I can do whatever I want to. No, it doesn't. Are elders a steward of the church? Can they do whatever they want to? Jim says, darn, I was hoping. No! Stewards. And that's what man is. And we are to take care of our earth. We are to take care of our natural resources. Young people, I'm a chemist. I've worked my life as a chemist. Young people come to me and they say, I'd like some advice. What should I do for my career? What's something I should pursue if I'm a chemist? And I said, water. I said, water. Get into the science of water. Why do I say that? We do not live without water. 3% of the water on earth is potable. That means drinkable. 3%. Yes, sir. Yeah, and Jesus uses that same wording when he talks about he is the living water, okay? So this vision of living water, this vision of water is key in throughout the Bible and its importance to us. We then come to this. The fourth angel sounded his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them turned dark. A third of the day was without light, and also a third of the night. And I watched, and I heard an eagle that was flying in midair call out in a loud voice, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." And he's not saying W-H-O-E, he's saying W-O-E, different word. To the inhabitants of earth, because of the trumpet blast about to be sounded by the other three angels. So we see a fourth angel. We see a fourth angel, and this fourth angel is similar to the ninth plague in Exodus. And I think I have the reference wrong there, but ninth plague in Exodus, and he says, he's suggesting that such calamities occur throughout history, but they will be more intense as the end approaches. And I don't know that it's more intense, but we become more aware of the calamities. One thing that we have today is instant information. Things that we take for granted today. Oh, there was an earthquake in Indonesia. We know that instantly. 50 years ago, you may never have known it. Or if you did, it'd be a week later, right? And you go back 100 years and you would never have known it. And those things, they always occurred. Christ says they're always going to occur. You're going to hear about this stuff all the time, he says. That's what he tells his disciples when he's sitting there with him. He says, you're going to hear about this stuff all the time. It's going to happen. But don't fret about it. Why shouldn't we fret about those things? Because we have hope. We have hope. So we see we see here these calamities that are going to affect the earth. The final three trumpets are going to differ from the previous three. From the previous four. The final three are only going to affect a certain group of people. The first four affected everybody on earth, all earth dwellers. That's us. We're earth dwellers. The next three are only going to affect certain people. Who are they? Well, let's be a little kinder than saying evil people. Earth dwellers, those people who are not what? Sealed. Yes, sir. I don't believe that's what it's saying. I believe, and again, we don't take Revelation in chronological order. So those 7 are now being reflected similarly in the 7 trumpets. And he's restating what he stated in the 7 seals, in a sense. Okay? And that's my opinion. And those are the people, he says, are going to be delivered from all this stuff. Not that they're going to avoid calamity. They're still going to have tragedy, calamity in their life. But they're going to have hope in that Christ will deliver them in the end. The others, people that are earth dwellers who do evil, those who don't believe in God, those people are going to be punished. They will not be in his presence. And so that's how I interpret it, and that's how, from my studies, that's where I came to the conclusion. So we're not talking about something, about 7 seals followed by 7 trumpets. We're talking about this. And when we get to the bowls, it'll be this, okay? He's going to reiterate it 3 times, okay? 3 times will he go through this concept that God is going to judge the earth and the people on the earth and deliver the people who are his. Okay? That's how I read it. And I'm no expert. Okay? These are things I have studied. Okay? The 5th angel is an interesting one. And again, if you want to get into historists, boy, you can really get into this one. This one has some real interesting stuff. And the 5th angel sounded his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen from the sky to the earth. Okay? What's a star? Heavenly body, but what does it represent? Do you remember? Angel, typically. Okay? But it can also refer to a kingdom. Okay? It has fallen to the earth, and the star was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. What's the abyss? We'll read. When he opened the abyss, smoke rose from it like smoke from a gigantic furnace. The sun and the sky were darkened by the smoke from the abyss. And out of the smoke, locusts came down to the earth and were given power like that of scorpions of the earth. And they were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any plant or tree, but only those people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. They were not allowed to kill them, but only to torture them for 5 months. And the agony they suffered was like that of a sting of a scorpion when it strikes. So the 5th angel has now come, and this angel, or this trumpet, the 5th trumpet has been blown. And this time we see a star fall from heaven, likely referring or potentially referring to an angel. Is there any reference to that in Scripture anywhere about an angel falling to earth? A couple times we see it. And again, we're not going to read it, but you can look for yourself. Jesus himself said it, correct. And he says it where, do you know? Luke 10. So go to Luke 10 and you can find it. And we're not going to have time to read it. We'll run out of time as it is. But he talks about, he had sent out the 72 of his disciples. Go out there, spread the word. And they come back and they said, Jesus, that was awesome. Man, whatever we did, we could heal people. Snakes could bite us. Scorpions could sting us. And nothing would happen to us. It was awesome. And Jesus' response was, I saw Satan fall to the earth. What was he telling them? Did he literally see? I don't know if he literally saw it, but what would that mean to you? You saw Satan fall to the earth.
He's after the disciples now because of the power that they've been given by Christ, and they can also continue Christ's mission after he has been returned to heaven.
Okay, that's part of it. That's part of it. She said that now Satan is now going to be pursuing the Christians, not just Jesus himself, but other Christians. But I think there's a little more to it. What do we say when he falls off his high throne? What do we say? What does that mean? He fell off his throne. He fell off his high horse. What does that mean? He's humbled. Satan was humbled by what was happening. He didn't know, no longer does Satan have to deal with just Jesus. He has to deal with his disciples. And so he says, I saw Satan fall to the earth. This was a punch to Satan. Any of you ever been stung by a scorpion? I have a couple times. I lived in Central Texas, and so a couple times, watching TV one time, sitting on the floor, one crawled up my pajama leg. You know the nice thing about a scorpion? There is nothing nice about a scorpion, okay? Nothing. You cannot train them. You can't teach them anything. They have one thing to do in life, and that's to kill and eat. And they kill with their tail, okay? They are not nice creatures at all. And yet, the scorpions could not touch the Christians. The snakes could not touch it. Some people are really freaked out by snakes. I'm not so much, but I respect them. But he said the snakes, which you cannot train, and the scorpions, which you cannot train, they're not going to affect the Christians. What's he saying? Well, in Matthew, they may not have got that, or in Luke, they may not have got that, but here we get that. He says these scorpions, they don't have any effect on you. Satan cannot spiritually affect you if you're in me, Christ. If you're in Christ, they have no effect of you. They can't do it. Yeah, they're going to be a nuisance, and you're going to suffer a little bit, but they can't kill you. Similar situation with Job, if we remember. When Job was a godly man, Satan says, you protect him. That's the only reason he's godly. And God said, go ahead, test him. And he tested him all the way to near death. Okay? Yeah, he suffered. But God still blessed him after the fact. And that's who our God is. So Isaiah 14:12 also speaks about Satan falling to the earth. That one's more of an indication of an earthly event of a kingdom, but read it for yourself. When I originally studied this a couple years ago, it made me think of the movie or the show Breaking Bad. It's a great metaphor, or it talks about the human condition. I don't know how many of you have seen Breaking Bad, but it starts with a guy who is a chemistry teacher, nice chemistry teacher. He's a nice guy, but his wife has cancer. He can't afford to treat cancer. So, well, maybe I'll just make some illicit drugs to get a little bit of money to make her. You see a nice man who dips his toe into illegal things and evil things, and every time he does, it becomes a little bit more evil and more evil and more evil. And you start the show with an empathy for this guy. At the end, there's no empathy for him at all. He's a disgusting person, and the things that he does are disgusting. And that's a very nice or a very interesting way to portray the earth and earth dwellers. We dip our toe into something that's evil, and it just continues to build, and that will happen to all people who don't have God. And then the sixth angel. Let's go ahead and read this. I'm going to pass this one because it says that this fifth trumpet is the first of the woes. So it is spiritual destruction of those who are not sealed, internal corruption. And then we see that happening throughout our nation and other nations. The things that are happening, you watch even the legislature in this state, and the stuff that they've just recently passed, where they can take your child, and I'm not making this up, go read it for yourself. If your child says that I want to become transgender, okay, at any age, the state now has the authority to take your child and not tell you where they are and to give them that treatment to transgender their lives, even as a young child. Just passed this week. Is that evil? That's evil. That's pure evil in my mind. Then the sixth angel sounded his trumpet, and I heard a voice coming from the four horns of the golden altar, and before God, and it said the sixth angel who had the trumpet released the four angels who were bound at the great river Euphrates. And he talks, and I'm not going to read all this, we don't have time, but he talks about an army that says is 200 million, okay, 200 million in strength. Or some translations say myriad upon myriad upon myriad. An army that large would be a mile wide if they're standing in formation, formation being close to shoulder if you're a soldier, would be a mile wide, 85 miles long. That's 200 million soldiers. The only country on earth, probably two countries on earth could actually field an army of that size just from population. But could they really ever do that? Probably not. So again, he's using numbers to give us an impact. But he's saying to earth dwellers, he's saying, you people in Rome in particular, because he's trying to calm the people and give assurance to the people in the 7 churches of Asia. He's saying, there's coming a time when Rome is going to pay the price. And it's going to come from internal corruption. And it's going to come from without. There are going to be nations that come and crush Rome. And we saw that it happens because Muhammad comes. A lot of people use the fifth trumpet as being a reflection of Muhammad and Islamism, or is the Islam's coming. Many of the descriptions fit, okay? Again, I don't think he wants us to take it literal, but again, the historist would take it literal. But she made a point. We can make things fit even when they don't fit. So, but then he talks about this army who's on the other side of the Euphrates, which is the border of Rome, and they are going to come in, and they are going to be destructive now as well. It's going to be external destruction. And through history, we have seen this, okay? Not just of Rome, but of all nations that have risen to power, okay? Islam is pushed back eventually, and the Turks push them back, and the Turks are terrible warriors and destroy Rome or destroy parts of the Roman kingdom and others. They're pushed back, and then, it happens one after the other. Nazis, they took over all of Europe, but then they were pushed back. It's human history. It's what happens, and it's very reminiscent of the 10th plague. And Jesus comforts us by saying, you will always have wars and rumors of wars. Always. Do not be alarmed. The point is not to predict a sequence of events. The point is to evoke and to explore the meaning of divine judgment, which is impending on the sinful world. I love that quote. Okay, I'll read it again. The point is not to predict a sequence of events. Speaking of Revelation, the point is to evoke and to explore the meaning of the divine judgment which is impending for the sinful world. Such things must happen. Thank you for your attention. That is Michael Gorman from Reading Revelation Responsibly. R.